It's January, you're setting the goals for your team, and if you're doing what most managers do, you're setting yourself up to fail. I'm Helen Bryant, I'm a leadership coach, and I've worked with hundreds of managers over the last decade. And what I see is that goals that look completely doable on their own, but when you layer them all up, you've just asked your team to deliver 160% of their capacity. I think it's really helpful to think of it like a bucket. There's a finite amount of people, time, and money you have to achieve those goals. Now, you can find smarter ways of doing things, but realistically, there's a capacity constraint. Now, I worked with a sales director last year who had 12 competing priorities. His team were working flat out. Every week, he was firefighting issue after issue. So we used the system I'm about to show you, and within 90 days, they were back on track. They were much more focused, and he was no longer in meetings trying to explain why they were missing goals. Because the difference between leaders who hit their goals and those who are constantly on the back foot is that they have a system. And that's what this GPS method gives you, a framework that makes goal achievement inevitable instead of having your fingers crossed and hoping that it just all works out. When you set goals for your team, you already know you need to make them smart, but are you actually making them smut? Here's what I mean. Most managers nail the specific, measurable, and time parts, but the achievable and realistic, they all just get a bit lost. And that's why you miss goals or they become incredibly hard to hit, especially when you layer up those goals into the work capacity bucket and you see them in the round rather than looking at individual goals that often feel and look very robust in isolation. And I think it's one of the reasons that so many workplaces are under such high level of stress right now, because for years, leaders have been, due to competitive environments and due to all the amounts of change we've had going on, just adding more and more into the bucket. And people have to absorb that. And for mid and senior level managers, I think it's even more difficult because you've got the pressure coming from above for you to achieve those goals. And then you're looking at your team and you're thinking, oh, they're already quite busy. And then they end up kind of pushing back on you. And that's a really hard place to be. And I call it the squeezed middle. So, as a manager and a leader, your job is to bring what I call CAT to your work and to your teams: clarity, alignment, trust. So, you need to have clarity on what everybody needs to be doing. What are those goals? What is the outcome that you want to happen? Then you have got to align the right people. So, obviously, this is the people in your team who are going to do the work, but also it's the key people who may be involved in that work. So, especially cross functional colleagues. And then you build trust by communicating well, by having the right conversations and facing into the issues that make sure this is a really robust goal. This is such an important moment for you to get right. If you do, at the end of the year, you're going to be bathing in success and feeling yay. And if not, you're going to spend a whole year of hard work and tension. So, what using a framework like this does is make transparent all those problems so you can do something about it. It's the bit of leadership that often gets missed, the decision making, the challenging of the plan, and really making sure that it's robust. And this goal setting framework is a fantastic way of getting the evidence of what is going on in front of you to bring that clarity. There's another enormous benefit to you because as you bring this rigor to your thinking up front, you tend to spot the challenges so much earlier than just bumping into them. And that clarity makes it much easier for you to talk to your manager about it, and it makes it easier to talk to your team about it. And you have time to come up with creative solutions. Let me introduce you to GPS. Now, to give you a bit of history, GPS is a common acronym for goal setting. There are various versions with slightly different emphases and, in fact, use of the words, but they all act like a roadmap for your goals. It was popularized originally by Gary Keller in his book, The One Thing. However, other people have really taken it on. In fact, I watched a YouTube by Ali Abdaal just before Christmas where he was using the GPS framework, but he was focusing on personal goal setting. I'm going to show it to you using the simple template I created to support it. And this is what I use with my clients. And I'm a big fan of templates for saving time and helping you to get off that blank page and get going on the work. So let's start with the G, the goal. There are three angles to consider for each goal. Number one is the goal. What is it that you want to do? What specifically is the outcome you're aiming for? So what you're trying to describe is, what does a good job, well done, look like? What will actually have happened when you have achieved this goal? Now, you want to avoid statements about how you might do it and really describe the end state, the good job, well done. Secondly, you need to think about why this goal is important. And in particular, how does it fit into achieving the overall goals of the organization? So this explains your why. And this really helps with your communication and alignment, as often in this situation, the why is implicit rather than explicit. And as a consequence, it is open to misunderstanding. And then the third aspect to consider is the scope. So what's involved, who's involved, and when does it need to be done by? And there's one more really important thing to define: what's out of scope. So in particular, you need to recognize two things. The first is any decision making around this goal. So who's going to be making the decisions? How are those decisions going to be made? Because this is going to form a really important part of how that work gets done. And you don't need to have all the nitty gritty detail. What you're aiming to have is just the visibility so you understand that situation well. And the second part is the stakeholders. Is this just you and your team? In which case you have the remit and that control to just crack on. Or are other teams or individuals involved, maybe from other functions? Because this is telling you that you're going to have to go and have a conversation to make sure that you're on the same page and aligned on this goal. Otherwise, this is where you're going to start to get a lot of those resourcing challenges a bit further down the line. So next we move on to the P, which is for plan in the GPS. Now, here you're breaking that strategy down into a plan. How are you going to achieve it? And what you're looking for is perhaps 3 to 5 big moves or milestones, the big steps of doing this plan for you to be successful. And what this is going to help you do is work out some of the timing. You're going to know whether you're on track or off track, and also the interconnected nature or the interdependencies of those activities. At this point, you then want to record who is going to be working on this. Now, to start with, record everybody who's needed to be involved. But in particular, you then want to put one name who will be responsible for this. And what this is going to immediately do is help with the accountability of delivering this goal. Now, this is the point at which you ask yourselves some questions, because this is where the realistic part of SMART actually comes in. So question one, do you have the capacity to do this? Do you have enough resources, money, or time within your team to do this? And remember, if each goal looks feasible on its own, that's all right. But this is the time to check versus everything else you're doing. So where does this sit? The second question is, what about the cross-functional alignment? Do they see it the same way as you? Do you need to have a conversation here to make sure that they do? The third question is all about the risk. And I really like the way Ali Abdaal explained this, because he called it a crystal ball. So the question to ask is, what could stop us? Or if we were 3 months down the line and we haven't achieved this goal, what normally would have gone wrong around here for us? And what this allows you to do is think about your contingencies. Finally, the S in GPS is the system. And this is all about how you're going to work in order to achieve that goal. In particular, here is tracking how you're getting on. So the measurement of it, but also how are you going to update each other? What's going to be written down? And the more you can make work transparent on goals and projects, a simple project flow so that everyone can track and keep things updated as they go. This is called asynchronous work, and you're updating in real time. It makes such a difference because it's going to free your time up so much as a manager because you won't have to keep chasing everybody and go, where are we on this? And tools that can really help you here could be a Trello, could be a Microsoft Planner, could be Slack and a spreadsheet, or Teams in a channel. But you want to set up a way of communicating and monitoring the progress of this goal, which isn't lost in email, which is the most inefficient collaboration tool ever invented. You want to keep it as simple as possible, but the very important point is everybody knows how it works and, importantly, what they have to do to keep that going. Now, defining upfront how you communicate and work together can save so much time down the line. There's so much inefficiency in ad hoc communication. One of the big challenges my clients are always talking about is that how do I ensure I have accountability within my team? This system helps you do that. Once you've worked out the goals and you've thought through the plan and it all completely fits together and you've communicated with your team, you now have several ways which will really help that accountability stick. The first is that you have names against all the relevant tasks and you've pressure tested it to know that is doable. You also have your transparent workflows. These tools help everybody update each other on what's going on. And that encourages people to show their work, as it were. And they tend to really respect each other because they can see the interconnected nature of the work. They're not doing the work for you, you're doing the work for each other as part of a team. This in turn helps you with your one-to-ones, that you can make sure you can support the individual in order that they can achieve their part of the goal. So this really is a system that gives clarity. It is aligned within your team, within your cross-functional colleagues, and provides the environment to make sure you have the right conversation at the right time. And this is what is going to accelerate your leadership. You come to this each week and go, so where are we now? And looking at this will tell you who you need to talk to, which of the team needs support, where are the blockages, where do you need to make some decisions to move the work forward. And this in turn will help you be the influential and impactful leader that you want to be. Now, this GPS framework is just part of what I call Manager OS, a complete operating system for your leadership. It's how you reclaim your time and finally lead the way you know you are capable of. So if I'd click the link in the description if you want to find out more about that. But here's what I know you're thinking right now. Helen, this all sounds great, but where am I supposed to find time in my week to actually do that? And that's exactly why I've made this video here. It shows you how to find 60 minutes of focused time every single week, even when you think you have none, because that is how you're going to monitor these goals and make sure they're hit. So I'd watch that next.